The speaker tonight is me. um, I wanted to share my experience just from being a senior QA, being part of interviews, mentoring and have new hires shadow me, just what has been effective when first starting out, either having QA experience or coming from no QA experience at all. And then just trying to find your footing, whether it's just entering the field for the first time, going to a new company, going to a new team, and just kind of how to adjust. So, what we'll be talking about tonight, if you're new to QA, your Scrum team or the company, um, coming to Scrum meetings prepared, how to be active in Scrum meetings, questioning everything, not being afraid to get the acceptance criteria that you need, establishing your reputation as a tester early on. I see a typo. Cool. Um, and then just attributes that I've seen that effective testers have. So we'll just jump right in. Um, Feel free to come off mute or put something in the chat if you have any questions as we go along. This is super informal. You can have your video on if you want. You don't have to. But I just have talking points. If we go off road a little bit because everyone wants to discuss something, that's totally fine. But basically, what I've seen, whether you're getting moved to a different Scrum team, whether you're just starting out for the first time, you don't know anything about QA or how to get started, or maybe you're going to a different company and you don't know how they do things yet. This is just some stuff that I've seen that will help you kind of get comfortable, gain your confidence quickly. So I recommend getting yourself onboarded and up to speed as quickly as possible. Does the company use Confluence? Do they have Confluence pages to help you learn, go over features, and is there documentation you can read? Make sure you get invited to all the Scrum meetings. I know Lucid, where I work, is very good about including QA, making sure QA is heard, having QA come to all the meetings, but I don't know if that's the case everywhere. So we're going to err on the side of like, if that is not the case in most of this, and just how to get yourself included in those meetings. So reach out to your PM, reach out to your team lead, just ask to be invited in any conversations that we'll discuss, like roadmap, planning, estimation, solutioning, things that will help you do your job better as QA. This point I find to be huge. Create and lead a positive, strong team culture. If you're coming in, you're getting acclimated, you're kind of meeting everybody, and you find that everyone, maybe they're on autopilot, maybe they're not passionate about what they're doing, maybe they're just showing up and working and then going home. I find that I enjoy my job a lot better when I'm having fun, when I enjoy who I work with, when we're passionate about what we're working on. I already have a lot of passion about quality and manual testing. And so I like to bring that to my team, and I like us to learn from each other and know each other as people, right? Like, I'm not just QA. I want them to know me as Kim who likes ferrets and, has fun and loves to talk in meetings and whatever. I want them to know me as a person. The reason why I've found that this is helpful to your role as QA is that you're going to get to know your developers, you're going to get to know your PM, you're going to get to know UX. You're going to actually build a relationship so that you do become people to each other. And when you actually are doing your work together, you have to have a harder conversation. Like, you need to offer feedback, you need to talk to them about maybe some unexpected behavior that you're seeing while testing. Those conversations go a lot easier when you've already started like a friendship kind of thing with your team members. I love to joke with my developers. I still have relationships with everyone I've ever worked with, and I've been on several different teams at Lucid. I've changed teams pretty often. That's just how it works, almost every quarter, just based on what we're working on. And I still keep in touch with all my developers. We've given each other gifts. We have running jokes, and it makes life a lot easier. So if you can do that, I do recommend just championing that, having ownership over that if it's not already something that's going on with your team, and schedule weekly team activities. Lucid has recently gone to like fully remote, and so that was a bit of an adjustment at first, because when you have in-person activities, it can be easier to bond. But we've definitely adjusted and found other ways to play, like board games on Board Games Arena. Just setting aside an hour a week is very helpful. It gets everyone to stop working, everyone to just hop into a game together and play together. It gives everyone a brain break, and then you can just get back to it. And it's really great for the team and having that team culture. So I think that's really, really important to have. You just have better conversations in Scrum meetings. The ice is already broken, so that's super helpful. If you have the ability, I say find a QA mentor. If there's someone that's been at the company for a while and they seem to have, that those relationships already, a lot of the developers know them already. They seem to know their way around all the features. They're kind of helping you anyway with documentation and stuff. Like, really latch onto that. Have them be the person that you ask questions to, that you just they're your point of contact. I really recommend that. Don't try to do everything on your own. A lot of times developers don't really have the knowledge that QA does with like tools and documentation and stuff like that. So if you can find a mentor, I do recommend that. I'd say it's important for your first like 3 months, until you're comfortable, but it'll help you to build your confidence. Yeah. So, do you have access to documentation and tools that you need? That, I don't want to say be annoying, but like, if you have to be annoying, be annoying. Like, you need to get what you need. That's why team culture stuff helps, because like when you need to be annoying and ask to be included in everything and ask to have access to everything, they're just like, oh, okay, like no problem. Like, that's what you need, and they'll understand why. When you're doing your job and you're doing your job really well, it's because you have access to everything that you need. So do you know like all the environments and the URLs that you need? Do you are there other tools that the company uses that you should be aware of? Like, what are the credentials for browser stack, and what access do you have in LastPass? Stuff like that. Just make sure that you have everything that you need all the time, and it could be changing all the time. So just don't be afraid to ask. You can, while you're kind of figuring out how your team operates and how your developers operate and stuff, you can also talk to the previous QA. If there was a QA before you joined the team, and kind of talk to them and find out what they did with their team. How were pull requests submitted? Did they do like QA developer sync calls on more difficult stories? If not, maybe that's something that's really good to do, especially while you're new. You can use the excuse, oh, I'm new, I'm just trying to understand what we're working on. Do you have like 10 minutes to kind of walk me through some of the context for this thing? And you can start to create habits with your developers and your teams, and it kind of puts you in front of them and shows them that you are invested, and that you care about what you're doing and you want to learn. So if there are processes that are in place, you can learn those and maybe tweak them if they need tweaking, or you can come up with your own ideas and processes. Like um, we use uh, Slack for almost everything. It's a huge, huge communication tool that we use all the time. And there is a workflow that you can create um, in um, Slack that will allow you to set up all the questions that developers have to fill out um, before they submit a pull request. And they're not just adding you to the pull request so that when you go into Bitbucket, you have like 20 pull requests and you don't know what the priority is, and you don't know where to start, and you don't know how to communicate to your team that, oh, I need to look at this first. I need to look at this first. If they're submitting it into the Slack channel, they're going to see the order in which things are coming in. They're filling out the priority. They're filling out if they're going to update automation that, or they're going to add new automation. They're going to fill out if it needs backwards compatibility. They're going to fill out if there's acceptance criteria already, and it just kind of reminds them to do those things. And so that's a process we put into place that we find to be extremely effective. Uh, Next thing I'd say is come to Scrum meetings prepared. I know not everyone has the bandwidth for this, but I'd say if you can, try to make time to be up to speed with what's going to be discussed in the meeting. You can look at the issues in the backlog that are going to be discussed in planning, and usually the PM will own the backlog. They'll have prioritized everything as to what's going to be discussed, or they'll have already created a section in Jira that they're planning to go over in planning. So just familiarizing yourself with those things, you can kind of start to think about questions that you're going to have. Um, that way you can just bring them up in the meeting when the time's appropriate or when the ticket's being pulled up. You can look at the sprint board. So I'm going to discuss all Scrum meetings, like daily Scrum, planning estimations. So before daily Scrum, you can look at the sprint board just to kind of go over, because you'll be able to see the columns of what's about to come in for the day. And so you can get up to speed on that, kind of ask, hey, do you expect to have, so-and-so ticket over to QA today? Is anyone expecting to have anything to QA today? So that you can prioritize your day, figure out how much time you have for testing, set aside time for like the bigger, higher priority stories that are going to take more time. But you'll be able to communicate all of this to your team in stand up so that they already have like expectations on what's going to be done and when. That way you can talk about if you're blocked on anything, if you need help with setup or you have questions about setup, what your workload is. Maybe you have just a ton of meetings that day and you're like, hey, I completely plan to get to, ticket 1465, but I have about 2 hours today. So I will look at it around 2 to 4 and I'll reach out to you if I have any questions. They should just always know what's going on with QA for that day. So if you can communicate that in stand up, I think it's really great. They can learn to trust you as QA. They can learn to trust your work. They can learn to trust that you are constantly thinking about priority and managing your workload and stuff like that. It's just really great for your relationship with your developers. What I have found, especially if we're starting a new story or it's a new team, I will set aside a meeting with the lead, the PM, UX. It could be individual, it could be all together, because I want to get up to speed. So I want to look at mocks. I want to know about deadlines that are important, any MVPs that are coming up, like sprinkles, roadmap. I want to know as much as I possibly can. It really helps when it comes down to testing. the more you know, you can already start to question UX decisions and UI consistency and stuff like that. You're just more involved, and I think it's great. You get to know them while they kind of pass on information to you. So I feel like that's really helpful, especially while you're onboarding, because you're just like, hey, I'm Kim. I was just curious what our roadmap is for this quarter. And so it makes you look really good. Um, Huh. Make time to exploratory test. I love exploratory testing. It's tough, especially when you're really busy, but it's important, especially if you've just talked to like your PM and stuff, and they're like, "Hey, this is what we're going to be working on next." You can actually start exploratory testing around that area and getting familiar with features, what's already out, what's already the expected behavior. You can start to think about, is this delightful for the user? Do I see any pain points that I can bring on once we actually start discussing this and planning it out? Um, it's just really nice to know what the existing behavior is before you're going to start work, because if you wait till the last second, you'll spend time doing that while you actually have the pull request. So while you're waiting for pull requests to come in, it's a great time to just get familiar with the area that you're working with, see if there's any other areas that you think might get impacted when you do get those features put in. um, so make time to exploratory test, I'd say once a week. Um, if you can't do that, definitely before starting a new epic. So yeah, and this is super important. This I would definitely say at least weekly. Familiarize yourself with the backlog and bugs. I would say daily check in to your Jira bug filter for your team and see if any new issues have come in the night before. Make sure that they're getting prioritized. Every company is different. Sometimes PMs kind of own this stuff, but I really recommend QA to just like take ownership over stuff. Like, have the knowledge around bugs and the bug count and the KPIs and the KPI goals, KPI thresholds. If you don't know what any of that is, I would say those are some terms to get familiar with so that you can kind of understand um, how many bugs your team has. How do they plan to tackle those bugs? Do they have a goal that they're going to chip away at it by the end of the quarter? If not, maybe that's something you can own and suggest, um, and make it a lofty goal. Like, if you have 150 bugs, um, try to get 25 lower by the end of the quarter. But um, that doesn't even include, that's like bugs fixed. That doesn't even include like if things are no longer reproducible, somehow they got fixed along the way. You want to make sure that there's still issues. How long have they been sitting there? Um, you want to know what your team owns, what your team is responsible for, what those features are, and that's where exploratory testing comes in as well for the once a week. Is while you're getting familiar with the bugs in your backlog, you're learning about those features too. So you're going in and you're exploratory testing around that area and seeing what the bug looks like anyway. So those kind of tie in together. And then you can set up a weekly sync with team lead or PM or both in one meeting to do a type of like bug triage to find out if users have certain complaints about certain issues. Like, do more these issues come up more than others? Do they're more painful for the user? So then like, oh, okay, I should talk um, to the team during planning and really vouch for getting these bugs pulled onto the sprint sooner rather than later. um, so communication around bugs is really great. um, and if you can set up those syncs with your PM and team lead, that's super helpful. um, let's see, are there any questions you already have around work? Have them written out. So that kind of goes back to the like looking at the backlog and the issues you're going to discuss during planning. Just have your questions available and with you. Um, that way you can just get your answers in planning. Um, so yeah, being prepared. And this is tough, especially if you don't have a lot of time to test and you have a ton of meetings. It can be really difficult to just kind of like hands up, I'm going to pay attention to this meeting. I'm not going to test. I'm not going to multitask. It can be very difficult, but it's extremely beneficial because you can catch a lot of things that you would have missed if you were busy testing or um, all of a sudden they're like, hey, QA, what do you think? And you're like, I'm sorry, what? I was in the middle of something. Like you want to try to be available for that hour or however long that scrum meeting is and just kind of like let your focus be the meeting. Don't answer stuff in Slack. Like just try to be very present and actively listen. Um, because they are a really great place to ask questions and to dig deeper and to get discussions going because I feel like that's a really big part of being QA is asking questions all the time. And it's not necessarily to get answers, but to prompt discussions with your developers and your team because maybe it's stuff they hadn't thought of. And so you're just like, hey, I thought of this thing. Um, I'm wondering if so and so and so. And then they don't really have an answer, but all of a sudden the senior developer's like, oh wow, that's a really good point. Maybe we should do this, this, and this. And and you're finding that the quality is being improved early on in the meeting before development is even happening. People are thinking about edge cases, they're thinking about solutions and the user in the meeting. And so if you're just asking those questions because you're actively listening and being present, um, it just improves overall quality for sure. Um, so yeah, just have those with you. Um, what is your confidence level at when the meeting is about to end? I would say this is probably the biggest reason to be active in these meetings because all the tickets that were being discussed, how do you feel about them? How do you feel about how you're going to test them? Do you know enough information? Do you know how to get set up to test? Um, do you know the impact? Do you know the risk? Um, do you uh, do you have all your questions answered? Do you feel by the end of the meeting and they're like, okay, we're done with planning, do you feel like, cool, all those tickets, I know exactly how to get started on those. I'm actually going to start setting up for those now. Or I have follow-up questions and we're going to take it offline. So if you're not confident, ask yourself why and ask how you can gain that confidence. What can you ask that will fill in that confidence for you so that you're able to just 100%, as soon as that pull request is in front of me, I can get started and start testing it and be efficient and effective and thorough. Yeah. So, like I said, question everything. You want to work at a place that is not going to make you feel stupid for asking questions, but if they do, just power through because asking questions is so important. You don't really want to fake it till you make it's not efficient, right? So like what questions do you have? Are you making people think about everything they need to think through before the epic actually starts? Are they talking about risk? Are they planning to have just a huge story? Developers are working on it for a month, and then all of a sudden they give it to QA, and you have had nothing to do for a month, and now you just have this huge thing to test, and now they're just waiting on QA. So if you do have that kind of experience, you can come into the meeting and it's just like, oh wow, this sounds like a really big story. I wonder if it would make sense to break it down a bit, make it into smaller stories. That way QA can really um, focus on each smaller ticket and smaller feature at a time instead of testing the thing as a whole. Um, Should it be behind an A/B test? Should it be behind a feature flag? So that it's not in front of users right away. If you're incrementally releasing stuff in those smaller pieces, should it be behind an A/B test because you're not entirely sure how the experience will be until it's all together? So should it be hidden for the users? What's the impact? Is it large, or is it really small and controlled? Like, is it going to break a lot of things, or is it going to is it just very small? It's just a small feature you're implementing. um, you can talk about automation. Are they putting it in the same ticket? Are they adding it later? And so you're just getting those wheels going, so that they can start to think about writing unit tests and stuff, so that you are able to manually test what's important as it comes out, but then the unit test can catch things that you've already checked. And if they do break while they're out, they can have alerts and let the team know that something needs to be fixed. Um, so yeah, you can ask about the delight for the user, pain points, so the risk around backwards compatibility, and if that's needed. Um, and you can ask about, what does setup look like? What does QA need to do for this story? Is it going to be back end testing? Is it going to be front end testing? Is it both? Will you need to SSH into the database? So you can kind of ask those questions just so you can kind of get it in your mind, like what you'll need to do for that ticket. Don't be afraid to get the acceptance criteria that you need. Each developer is totally different. Some are really great at communication. Some have never even had a relationship with QA before and have no idea how to give acceptance criteria, or how to word it, or what QA needs. So this is where that positive team culture comes in, because you have to ask for acceptance criteria, and they spent all this time writing out acceptance criteria, and you still don't know any more than you did before you looked at the acceptance criteria. So it really helps kind of figure out what tactics you need to use. Do you need to ask for the acceptance criteria in planning, because the one-on-one conversation with your developer is a little harder? They don't really want to give you acceptance criteria, or they're very short and they say, hey, I already filled it out. It says test things, they should work, you know. So you have to kind of finagle that and see what tactics will work so that you end up with what you need. And so that's where a developer QA call, a quick Zoom call, can help, because you can say, hey, I did read your acceptance criteria. I wanted to make sure I understood all the areas that your code is changing. So would you mind hopping on a call with me, and you can drive and just kind of walk me through the changes that you did? And then by the end of the call, you can fill out the acceptance criteria and then kind of show them what it looks like, so that they can see almost a type of template of what helps you. Like, oh, I need to have this A/B test turned on. I need to have this level of account. I'm expecting this, or this was changed, or this was fixed. So you're kind of training your developer, but you definitely want everything that you need. So don't be afraid to try that and to try different things. The PM is also really helpful with acceptance criteria. They should be filling that out. I like to train developers to fill out their acceptance criteria. I feel like they should know what their feature does on the front end. I feel like they should have already tested it. And so if they have tested it, they should be able to kind of explain how they tested it and how I should test it in the acceptance criteria. But if that's not the case, the PM should definitely be able to fill out the acceptance criteria, and then any holes you see, or any questions you have, you can then go to the developer for that. So I really like to establish my reputation as a tester early on. And I've kind of touched on a lot of these things. Because as you're introducing yourself to your team, as you're onboarding, as you're asking questions, they're going to get to know you. As you're communicating in the daily scrum, they're going to kind of see what your patterns are and the communication that you offer. And they will know what to expect of you as a QA. So you can then set your own expectations. So in order to test effectively, like what do you need? Are you adding feedback and estimation? Like, wow, this sounds really complex. I'd say we should add another point just to allow for testing. Acceptance criteria with the training, they're going to get to know that, so that you don't have to have acceptance criteria talks all the time. Hopefully it's only a handful of times, if that, and they should feel comfortable with understanding what you will expect as far as acceptance criteria and how it should be written. They'll know to include setup, they'll know to include context. And setting your boundaries is really important. Our minds are the most important thing. They are so valuable. It's our approach, it's our perspective. We think about so many different users and user types. And so you want to communicate that you need this long to test, or that you're not going to work outside of business hours unless it's like crunch time, right? Like, you want to have very healthy boundaries for yourself so that you're staying fresh. You want to make sure that you're taking breaks. You want to make sure you're taking PTO. You don't want to get burnt out. So you want to stay mindful of your self-care so that you're not just hitting approve because you're just so dang tired, you haven't eaten lunch. You want to really take care of yourself. So like, if you're communicating, absolutely, you just submitted a pull request, it's 4:30, I will take a look at this first thing in the morning. You know, you're setting a healthy boundary, you're communicating, and I think that's important. And they'll know that going forward, like, oh, if I submit this to her at 4:30, she's probably not going to look at it, because who wants to rush testing? Like, if it's a bug fix, it's very different. Bug fixes don't take a lot of time to validate. But if it's like a brand new feature, you're not gonna cram it into a half hour of testing when it's not super high priority, it's not the end of the sprint. Like, you've already weighed all that out. Maybe your developer is really impatient. You have to give pushback, but like, be gentle and say, I totally know you want this merged. I know you've been working on this for a really long time. I will look at this first thing in the morning. Um, so yeah. And now, just like attributes of testers, I really feel like we're communication ambassadors. I feel like we should know what's going on with other teams, overlapping work, um, tickets that come into support, um, issues that pop up in like ops emergency channels. I feel like it's really important for us to pay attention to those things, pay attention to relevant Slack channels, and then communicate it back to our team. I'm kind of in the middle of that right now, where we're gunning for a deadline for an MVP, and we have a swarm test scheduled, and it's just work that a ton of teams are working on together in different parts. And I had a meeting with some of the QA, and they didn't know about the MVP. They didn't know about the deadline. Um, there was just a lot of communication that wasn't happening. So I have a wonderful PM, and he and I are working together to just get everybody up to speed, in the same loop, on the same page, all paying attention to the same deadline. And I've communicated issues I've seen come through for support that we'll want to keep in mind when we're doing this worm test. And so just be that ambassador, keep your ear to the ground for issues and stuff that is related to your team. Be curious all the time. What does the thing do? Why did we implement it this way? Is there a better way to do it? What was your first impression as a user when you were exploratory testing? That's important. Like having that tester gut and trusting it, very important. And what happens if you do this thing? You know, just be curious all the time, and always be learning. I don't think there's any actual failures, right? There's just learning opportunities. So if anything happens, if your team misses anything, if you miss anything, how can you not miss it next time, right? Just be open to learning. I mentioned having a mentor, acting as many different users. Test effectively, efficiently, and thoroughly. You don't want to catch yourself running down rabbit holes, right? Because as a tester, everything is interesting, especially to me. Everything is interesting. Like, oh, wow, what if I do this? What if I do this? And then you find yourself being a different user. It's really easy to just like get lost and find yourself way down the road from where you're supposed to be. So try to reel it back and focus on the area that you need to in order to be thorough for that area, and use your time wisely, and get something approved as soon as it's possible. As soon as you have that confidence level of, yep, I tested everything for this thing. I tested edge cases. I can't think of anything else. I feel good about this. Approve. Um, if you're blocked, if something's not working, if you can't figure something out, if you just keep getting errors, or there's something about the acceptance criteria where you just do not see the work that you're supposed to be seeing, don't wait. Like, get yourself unblocked as soon as you can. Message someone. It could be your QA mentor, it could be your developer, but don't wait. Don't let a day go by and like, oh wow, I don't know why I'm blocked, or my testing environment isn't working. Like, get unblocked as soon as possible. um, be prepared, right? But also be flexible and adaptable, because roadmaps change, stories change, deadlines change. So it's great to have a plan. It's great to be prepared, but be flexible just in case that change does happen, and be prepared to just kind of pivot. Still have that confidence and push through. Yep, have questions in Scrum meetings, be tenacious, and take breaks. I will say it again, take breaks, take a lunch, take a full lunch, eat. Go to the kitchen, grab a cup of coffee, because I I don't want to say I'm an artist, but I'm going to say I'm an artist. I enjoy art. So if I'm painting a lot, I'm not going to see things that I could improve or that could be better if I'm just staring at the canvas for hours and hours and hours. I'm so into it. I don't want to put it down. I'm invested. You really need to get yourself to just stand up, walk away, and come back, because you need that breath. Like, go play a 10-minute game. Go do something else, because you need that reset in your mind. You don't want to burn yourself out for the day. You don't want to just feel so fried that you've been looking at this pull request all day. You want to, like, all right, I've been looking at this all day. I can't even think straight right now. Like, go grab a snack and then come back. So take care of yourself. It's really important. Don't feel the pressure from your team. Like, set those expectations so that you are able to take breaks when you need them. That was a lot of talking. I'm really sorry. I hope I didn't lose anyone. That's really what I had. I'm happy to answer any questions or anything that anyone thought of, but I'm really passionate about this stuff, which is kind of why I rambled on for so long and why there were so many points. I hope it was helpful. I hope you were able to take anything away from this. Does anyone have any thoughts or suggestions or questions?
Kim, this is great. Thank you.
I feel like I just talked for 45 minutes straight. But I hope it was helpful. This is stuff that I've definitely learned that I wish I knew starting out. Like, I didn't know any of this and everything was scary and I had imposter syndrome. I definitely didn't have confidence. So I'm really hoping that this helps everyone just be confident in who they are as testers, be confident in your tester gut, um, because it's important. Your mind is so valuable, and hopefully you can show your company and show your team that, in these ways, and just be involved and like what you're doing. So
Yeah, it definitely resonated for me. So, especially, I was an intern and then I recently converted full time at my company. A lot of what you said was really resonating. So I really appreciate it, Kim.
Oh, of course. It's tough to learn all of this like through fire. so, so I hope you're having a better time. I yeah, I hope it's going
Yeah,
well.
yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, I've never reviewed a pull request before, so that's a little bit foreign to me.
Okay.
Just kind of, doing other manual testing activities and learning a lot every single day. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
It's so fun. Do you enjoy exploratory testing? Are you able to do that at all?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that's kind of what we do. We don't really use test cases. We mainly do exploratory testing. So so that's how I find most of the bugs. So
That is so
it's just
fun.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'm just enjoying it. I'm just so grateful, to you and to Jeff and to all of you who run this group. And sorry, I've been like MIA for several months.
No, it's
We're
okay.
just so busy.
Life happens. That's why we have recordings, right? Like, you can just hop on the YouTube channel and watch the recordings. So, and this will
Right.
be up on YouTube. So,
Awesome. What does MVP stand for? I was wondering
sorry.
about that.
Minimal viable products. So, um, a lot of times, if you don't have a ton of time to work on something and hit a deadline, the team will kind of weigh out what they feel are the most important features to get out first. Like, not polish items, all that stuff will come later, but like, what do we feel is going to be the most beneficial thing? What did we promise, this account or whatever? Like, how can we deliver it, in the time that we promised, in the most efficient way possible? So let's keep it in a small scope. This is what we're going to include for our minimal viable product. Um, and then, we'll have a couple of different phases after that, where we'll release more stuff, but the user won't have to wait for everything to be released at once. They'll have like the really important stuff out first.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Great question. I think people had comments. Let me just see real quick. Oh, yay. Lots of info. You are correct. I tried to edit it down. I was like, wow, I have a lot of bullet points. Oh, perfect. LinkedIn. Matt shared his LinkedIn if anyone wants to link up with him. That's awesome. Um, Matt has a question. Does anyone have any resource recommendations to practice writing more bug reports? Um, what I've done in the past is I will Google. So, like, if there's a game I enjoy or something, I will try to find their like Jira issues. And I've actually found Minecraft bugs like in Jira that are available to the public. And so I would say Google and use keywords like Jira, uh, whatever you can to get into a Jira issue so that you can see how an issue is written out, or you can Google filing a bug report. Um, as far as like a template for how to write a bug report, I would say the information that you want to include is the unexpected behavior, the expected behavior, and then you want to numerically list out the steps as if you're explaining it to a 5-year-old or someone who's never even been in the product before. So like enter um Amazon shopping and sign in as the user and navigate to the wish list page. Like you want to make sure you're almost drawing them a map for how to get exactly to the behavior that you are seeing. You want to include an MP4 or a screenshot, anything that you can offer that will help them visually connect the dots to the weirdness that you're seeing and why you think it's weird. Um, I have Windows, so I use ShareX. And so I'm able to add a video to my Jira ticket as I log a bug. And I will also add stills, so screenshots, so that I can just, so they at a glance, they don't have to watch the whole video, but they can actually see what the issue is in a screenshot and put the pieces together and figure out what the issue is. So expected behavior, unexpected behavior, reproduction steps, screenshots and videos. And then if you have a suggestion for what you think should be happening, you can always like add that at the bottom. You want to include what operating system you're on, what browser you were in, any like if you're web testing, it just depends on what you're testing, but give them as much context as possible. Any console errors, so open the dev tools and screen grab any errors you might think would be relevant. You want to give that developer as much information as possible, so they're just like, oh wow, that was perfect and easy, I could find that with no problem. Does I hopefully that helps, Matt. But I would say Google it. I'm sure you can find templates that will help you out.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. That was helpful. I appreciate it. All good stuff. The expected, the unexpected. I'll take, snapshots if I need to. I could send them then to, to the people I need to. But no, that was helpful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And you can always just put everything in the Jira ticket. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop of information. That way, they don't have to go back into a DM and look for a video or a screenshot or anything. They can just come back to the Jira ticket and refer to it as they need to. So,
Right. Okay.
hey,
Okay. Thank you.
yes, of course. Well, I don't think anyone has anything else. It was good to see everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Does anyone have any more questions, thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment and say, yeah, I think screenshots and videos are probably the most important part of your Jira ticket.
It's so true.
I was told when I started my role that devs don't really like to read too much, so
Isn't that
yeah,
ironic?
yeah.
I find that so ironic.
So
And then those will be the ones that
It's
give you
just
like,
easier if they see it as opposed to reading about it. They would prefer to see
right.
what you're dealing with.
hey, guess what? As QA, I also would like to have that method. I don't want 3 pages of acceptance criteria that I have to like read through and figure out what I'm supposed to do. It's so tough because I'm like, wow, this looks like it took them 3 hours to put together, and it's not helpful at all.
That's probably like my number one question. Like I'm like you, Kim. I ask a lot of questions,
It's good though.
especially about acceptance criteria, expected behavior, expected results, those kinds of things. It's not always like you can't just assume that, okay, hey, I think it should work this way, so I'm gonna assume it works that way. No, you have to get clarification and stuff like that. And another thing I learned was For example, if you're testing a website with multiple pages, the way it behaves on one page may not be the way it's supposed to behave on another page. So that clarification is really helpful. But yeah, initially it was very overwhelming when I started. It's still a big learning process, and but it's fun. I'm learning something every day, and just keep at it. Keep practicing. The more you practice, that's how you develop confidence. So
Right.
Good advice. And I will even add what I like to do, especially if I'm not feeling great and I'm like, wow, why am I a tester? I'm horrible at life. I will go through and just kind of debrief all the great things I did that day. And I'll just write them down. I'm like, wow, I found this bug. I asked this question. I bridged this huge gap in communication, and just give yourself a little like pat on the back. It helps you get back to it and feel good about yourself and kind of push through that imposter syndrome that can just be so daunting. But show yourself your value. Like you did really great things in the day. I can absolutely guarantee it. So just remind yourself what you did. That was awesome. And just make that a practice so that you're not second guessing yourself, because you don't want to get in your head, especially when you're testing. It's just like, no, you want to be clear, you want to be confident, and you want to just tackle, right? So like don't
Right.
get in your head and try to find a way around that. I will say though, do not use GIFs to your Jira ticket. Use a video. Because developers cannot pause GIFs, and that's one way to anger someone. Because they have to watch it loop and loop and loop, and they're like, well, I didn't see the behavior. Can you get me a video that could pause? You're like, oh, sorry. I did that in the
Right.
beginning. So it's important that it's a video that they can stop, rewind, watch it again.
Okay, that's good to know.
Certifications that helps you land a job. What I found is that certifications and like education and stuff is not as important in QA as some other jobs. It's definitely more like, what can you demonstrate in the interview? How can you demonstrate the way that your mind works? How can you show them how you exploratory test and how you got there and what you found and what you compared? So I had an ISTQB sort of, I get the acronym all messed up, but I had that certification, and I feel like it helped me to get my foot in the door, but it wasn't really something like, oh, we're so glad you have that certification. That's exactly what we needed. It helps you to get your foot in the door, like Dev Mountain, and tester certifications. They do help, but if you can get yourself familiarized with YouTube, with Google, you want to know everything about Agile and Scrum, and sprints and verbiage, vocabulary. I feel like Scrum Master training is even more beneficial. If you can get Scrum Master certified, I feel like that will really help you to gain confidence as a tester, because the whole point of a Scrum Master is to kind of facilitate and get people unblocked, and to have the team feel like a team, and to have sprint goals and stuff like that. So I recently did my Scrum Master certification, and that was just amazing. I'm not just some QA that someone's going to throw something at. Like, I was also a team lead too. So I would say any experience or opportunities that come up that you can put yourself in front of, it's going to help you to be a tester, to help you during your interview. It's going to give you that confidence, because you want to demonstrate confidence, curiosity, creativity, critical mindset. And creativity is a really big one, because you'll find that a lot of questions are like, how would you test this vending machine, or how would you test this app? And they're always going to give you something that you're not going to be familiar with, or it's an object that is an everyday object that you have to like think creatively about. So practice those. um, Practice testing websites that you're familiar with, like Amazon and stuff. Like, find bugs in websites and just get familiar with exploratory testing and how to do that. But any certification that you can get may help you be seen by recruiters. But that's really it. I wouldn't say like, oh, you need these certifications. Is that helpful? Yay. Hands-on
Yeah,
experience is just so important as a QA tester.
I was just gonna add, yeah, when I was trying to get into this field, I didn't have any formal training or anything. I watched YouTube videos mainly. I went ahead and got a LinkedIn Learning subscription for a year, and because I was like, I have to prove that I'm doing all this work on YouTube. So I went
Exactly.
ahead and did that. At least back then, they didn't have a ton of stuff on manual testing on LinkedIn Learning, but they had a lot of the automation stuff. So that was there. I think it's really important to learn the jargon. So you're able to use those terms in your interviews and, you know, have a good conversation. And you can show that, hey, you know, I know what I'm talking about type of thing. But yeah, everything Kim said is correct. Like, you know, they're gonna ask you, you know, how would you test some everyday object? I was asked like, how would I test a blender or a stapler? Um, yeah. So, and you know, it did take about, I think it took me about 4 months to get a job, but even then I got an internship. So I would highly recommend, if you're open to getting an internship first, like a paid internship, start there, and then you'll learn a lot, and then hopefully they'll convert you to full time through that. Because getting a job right away, it was challenging. Like it, you know, I interviewed quite a bit. I ended up going the internship route and getting converted that way. So
Yeah, everything you say is true. Absolutely. For sure. You just want to get your foot in the door somewhere. You want to put yourself in front of learning. So whoever will accept you, you're just like, yes, thank you. I want to learn. Yeah. Keep trying, right? Like, just um a lot of developers and places online, they have projects. A lot of developers or beginning developers, they have projects. So maybe you can QA for just like side projects that are happening. That way you can at least offer experience on your resume that, you know, oh, I QA'd for this project and this is what I found. This was my impact. That's super helpful too. So just find opportunities, learn as much as you can. I think 99 Guru is the one that I spent a lot of time with, or Guru 99. I don't remember which way it goes, but I read a ton in addition to the ISTQB crash course. It was like 2 months of just like brain information, and I didn't know anything about testing, so it was just me wrapping my mind around concepts first and understanding what is agile scrum, what is testing, what are the types of testing, like what is functional testing, what is regression testing, what is exploratory testing, what is application testing. Like, understand what those are, what you're looking for. Get yourself familiar with concepts as much as possible, and then find a place that you can apply what you've read about and what you've learned. Yeah, that's my advice. Well, we are over time. I would talk forever if y'all let me, but I'm so happy that you all came, and happy I got to share this information with you. And I hopefully will see you all next month.